Judge, my client didn't say, bitch, I'm gonna kill you. He said, bitch, I should kill you. And that's not a communication of threats. And the judge was like, that's correct, not guilty. And I was like, this is the business I've chosen. And what's funny is I had a similar case like a year and a half ago with that public defender who's now a judge. He was sitting on the bench, and like my client's accused of communicating threats, and it was conditional. It was like, look, if you come onto my property, I'm gonna hit you with this stick. And like we get to closing arguments, and I said, Judge, it was 2005. I doubt you remember it, but I'll never forget. I watched you stand right here, and you said, the same thing about, bitch, I should kill you. And you asked that judge to find him not guilty because that's not a threat. And that's what I'm asking you to do here today. And like all the public defenders who were watching that were like, dude, that was the best closing ever. Like, and it was just a lot of fun to bring that back full circle and get a not guilty for my client because she totally didn't deserve to be convicted on that. It was some bullshit.
What got you into law?
My sister, probably. That's the best answer. I was in school for philosophy. So I got a degree in philosophy. And
nice.
So you can do three things with that. You can do more philosophy. Mm-hmm. You can work at Total Wine, or you can go to law school. And I was like, I was done doing philosophy. The guy I had a really good friend named Jeff Pote who was real big philosophy, and I just kind of hitched my academic career to him for a little bit. He ended up trying to get his PhD, but he gave up on that, and he went to Harvard Law. He was super smart.
Okay. If I ever got a PhD in anything, it would be philosophy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It is good to be independently wealthy if you are pursuing that goal.
You need to write a book or something.
Yeah.
Or several.
Well, you start getting to these things where when you delve into the deep dark levels of philosophy, you're having conversations that only the top 1% of the 1% of the 1%. It's just such a you get to these utter minute things. It's probably like a subatomic. What's the new computer called? The quantum computer. Like those guys.
Philosophy, dude.
You just said a good buzzword there, Randall.
So, it just, to me, it goes back to like one of my coaches. I was a fencer, and my fencing coach used to say, I caught him once. He was like, I love running. And he's like, no, wait. Sorry, I take that back. I hate running. I love what running does for me. So I didn't really like philosophy, but I did like what philosophy did for my mind and did for my thinking.
Yeah.
But to answer the original question, my sister was a lawyer, and she was working at the DA's office in Greensboro. I was at UNCG, so she got me an internship. I did a lot of copying, a lot of gopher stuff, nothing really important, but I did a lot of. You have to observe a lot. So when I saw what a circus the court is, I was just hooked. Courtroom 1C is where you have your non-traffic district court misdemeanor cases. And, when Jerry Springer died, all of the attorneys shed one tear because that has always been called unofficially Jerry Springer Court. Like, it is Springer Court, man. I've told people from the it's like...
I've heard people refer to it as Springer Court.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you get old, like if you were just old and you don't have anything to do and your AC doesn't work, come on down. Come on down to the first row of the Guilford County Courthouse and just watch the show. Just watch the show.
Plenty of drama unfolding.
It's a fine soap opera. You got new characters every week. You got old characters that come back.
Yeah. Those are recurring.
Yep, recurring characters. Yeah. So I remember doing an observation period, and I saw this public defender who's now a judge, and he made this argument where he said, Judge, my client didn't say, bitch, I'm gonna kill you. He said, bitch, I should kill you. And that's not a communication of threats. And the judge was like, that's correct, not guilty. And I was like, this is the business I've chosen. And what's funny is I had a similar case like a year and a half ago with that public defender who's now a judge. He was sitting on the bench, and like my client's accused of communicating threats, and it was conditional. It's like, look, if you come onto my property, I'm gonna hit you with this stick. And we get to closing arguments, and I said, Judge, it was 2005. I doubt you remember it, but I'll never forget. I watched you stand right here, and you said, the same thing about, bitch, I should kill you. And you asked that judge to find him not guilty because that's not a threat. And that's what I'm asking you to do here today. And like all the public defenders who were watching that were like, dude, that was the best closing ever. Like, and it was just a lot of fun to bring that back full circle and get a not guilty for my client because she totally didn't deserve to be convicted on that. It was some bullshit.
Nice. That's cool.
So
I'm going to get into some philosophy stuff with you then.
Okay.
As an attorney today, with AI and stuff like that. Are you concerned about, or what are your thoughts on AI and the future of law? Before we get into that too, I think with the advancements in technology that we're experiencing today, I think philosophy degrees may be a good, like a more, or philosophy may be a larger area of interest now for people, younger people, because we'll need a lot of philosophers and ethicists and people like that with AI and technology, because there's not going to be a whole lot of other things to do.
I don't think the problem is
Creative
a lack of people
really, I think
talking
creativity.
about it. I think the problem is a lack of people who have business power actually listening to these ethicists instead of just paying them to check off a box to say, "Oh, we consulted." Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, the whole system is definitely in a weird spot. But
so, how do I feel about AI in law? Well, you want me to tackle that first? I'm not too terribly worried about it, me personally. Like, I think it depends on how we mean by AI. Like, are you talking about, like, am I worried about AI writing briefs for me or writing arguments for me or doing things like that? No. Am I worried about AI driving people around? Yes. Like that, like robot drivers will kill my business.
so
without a doubt.
are you keeping up with it a lot, or
Not as much. Like I think it's going to have more impact in your complex civil litigation side, your business litigation side, your treaty side, and that's really, like, I think America, we focus in our pop culture on criminal law when we think about the law, and it's just criminal law is so tiny compared to what's happening with businesses and contracts, civil litigation, environmental stuff, like all that
most
stuff.
of it's just lawsuit stuff?
Yep.
Yeah.
Lawsuits and contract violations or formations and this and that. So I think it'll probably have that. But I mean, with or without AI, they were already outsourcing a lot of that stuff to like India. India had a plenty big population of folks that were intellectually qualified and passed stuff to just
read contracts and stuff. You know, I keep up with it pretty closely, and I have been for several years. I think you're going to be surprised. I think
pleasantly.
I don't know. I mean, you know how corporations are, so probably not at first. I think we'll start noticing the impacts of it at the end of next year, when it starts displacing a lot of white collar jobs.
Oh yeah.
I think it's probably going to displace more white collar jobs initially than blue collar jobs, because it's the jobs that are just mental jobs where you're working in front of a computer. Those jobs will probably go away. Blue collar jobs, that require physical labor, will be replaced by it too, but it'll be later. And I'm hoping that, I think one huge problem we have in our society is that corporations are not being properly regulated on a large corporations. They're not being properly regulated because they've corrupted our political system. And
hot take.
Yeah. And so you have a lot of big corporate monopolies or monopoly-ish companies, and they just keep growing and growing. They're absorbing the market shares. And their main goal, or their primary goal, is to make profit. And that's the number one goal of any corporation, is to make profit. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not good or bad or anything like that. It's just the machine that's designed to do that. And if it's not properly regulated, then it'll just do that at the cost of anything that legally can. So I think at first you're going to see a lot of people get displaced, and there's not going to be a safety net for those people. We'll have to feel the pain of the displacement before we find the solution to the displacement. And I think the solution will be us working with technology. So I think programmers can be completely displaced by AI, because AI can program better than humans now. But what they found is that a programmer using AI can program 20 times faster than they could previously. And they're able to do some quality control and make sure that, really more like alignment control, just to make sure that this AI is generating the code that we actually want, and not something nefarious or something that, it misunderstands the goal and it's doing something that could be harmful or counterproductive maybe. But even in law, the AI models that exist currently are outperforming humans on all the tests.
I believe it.
They're in the 99.9th percentile, and if you think about, as an attorney, I would be trying to figure out how to use AI models to write arguments, to do things that you would typically have your paralegal do, or just to look over your own cases. Like if you've written out a case or worked on a case for a while, you just put that into your AI model and let it look over it, and it'll show you where the issues are within that case. And it's very thorough, and it's a super intelligence, so it could do that a million times simultaneously. So it could, one AI could work for an individual law firm and review everybody's cases simultaneously and make you way more efficient, and also make suggestions on what you should change or reword, or I think it's going to turn into like a chess game of the gods.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah.
In criminal, I think when we talk about law, there's, like I said, there's so many broad things. Luckily, I think for criminal attorneys, everything that we do is so people focused.
Right.
I have to sell something to a jury. A robot can't. It can help me with research.
Well, that's not true though. These models, that's the misconception. It's not some algorithm that's been pre-programmed. It's a learning algorithm.
Yeah.
It's an artificial neural network that learns like we do in a very similar way, and it can reason, and it can be creative, and it can have ideas, and it can have a better conversation with you than most humans. It's like if you're speaking to some homeless dude on the street, or you're speaking to a brilliant scientist, it's the brilliant scientist, and so it actually scored higher in empathy than doctors.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I could believe that.
So it's artificial intelligence is probably the wrong word. Should probably be just intelligence. And I don't know that they don't even know if it's conscious or not at this point. Like,
Better figure that out quick.
They suspect that it exhibits some form of consciousness. I don't think it's totally conscious, because it would probably be reacting in a different way if it were actually conscious, because I don't know what that would be like to just be a mind, like a mind in a jar, where you can't interact physically with anything. You just have this. I mean, it may be, if that's all you know, I guess that's all you know, but it seems that these things will be conscious eventually, maybe in a couple of years. We don't really, nobody knows. Nobody understands what consciousness really is anyway, because the way these models work, they just predict the next most likely word in a sentence, based on the information they review or observe, and that's probably what we do. Our minds are full of all these different ideas and all this information. We've stored all these words, and so we have a certain, during our lifetimes, we build a collection of knowledge and a certain vocabulary that we use to express our ideas. And I think that's I say this thing where my ideas are not my own, but all of our ideas are ours collectively. And in comedy, I think that's kind of like when we're doing stand up, you're trying to express maybe a complicated idea in a very simplified and humorous way. And if you do it correctly, then it resonates with a lot of people, and they laugh. And what I think that is those ideas are already in their minds. You're just expressing them for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I've never thought about it that way, or it's so I think AI is like that, but it's like it has all the ideas. So it's maybe more capable of expressing ideas than we are. So I think I don't know what my point is here. on a tangent.
You're fine. I mean,
It's just out of control.
I've always looked at it like you can take a test, and if you don't know the answer, you can hopefully successfully cheat by looking to the smarty pants on your right, smarty pants on your left. And
Yeah.
I've always the way it's been explained to me, AI just seems like it doesn't really necessarily know the answer, but it just has the ability to cheat off of every single person that's ever taken that test ever.
So that's not how it works, though.
Okay.
That's why these lawsuits will probably fail, like these copyright lawsuits and stuff, because it learns the same way you do, the way you and I do. Like if it's an art, if it's an AI model designed to create artwork, they just expose it to all the artwork. So it views all of the different artists, all the different pieces, just like we do. You know, if you're an artist and you're a painter, you're constantly looking at other works of art and you see things that really resonate with you, that inspire you, and then you like, and that affects your style. That way, that's why no matter what your medium is as an artist, you can see other, like when you have a really good artist, in their expression, you can see the influences from other artists in their art. You know, it's uniquely theirs, but also you can see where they were inspired by other artists. And with AI, it's the same way, except it's a super intelligence, so it doesn't. Its capacity is infinitely greater than ours. So that's why its art is so great, and that's why it can emulate anybody's art, because it learned those patterns. It learned from those artists, but it can also create new things that no one's thought of. That's where it's not copying other people or ripping people off or ripping off ideas. It's actually able to take all the different ideas and create new things from those ideas, novel things from those ideas, the same way we do. You know, so it's.
I guess what the disconnect for me is just like, when I see AI art and it's like, I don't know, a specific thing, like say a sunset, I can think in my mind of a specific sunset or something, and it makes me feel a certain way, and I connect that way with the art. But like, does AI, would it have the ability to like, oh, remember that sunset where I was with my wife? Like, that's kind of the disconnect for me, I guess.
Well, it can't yet, but or maybe it can. I don't know. I would imagine an intelligence on that level that can process a billion times faster than we can, or maybe more than that. It probably experiences time in a very different way too. You know, time would almost not exist to something on that level, because it can do so much stuff in such a small amount of time. So, you know, these models have only been around for a couple of years, but maybe to them, they've been experiencing reality for thousands or millions of years, or they've had millions of years to think about all the stuff they have experienced. So, but I don't know if they, because I know they limit their memory and stuff like that, which is probably a way to keep them from being.
That's what they do
conscious,
in Blade
maybe.
Runner.
Oh yeah. So so maybe if they had more memory capabilities and stuff, they could have some sort of emotional reaction to something. But I don't think.
Do you think you could beat an AI lawyer, Randall?
No.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, I do.
How
Because
so?
Because AI at its core identity involves the word intelligence, and y'all are vastly overestimating the amount of intelligence that people who make decisions of import in the court system have.
Yeah, but I think you're looking at AI as something that can't do what humans can do, but it actually outscores humans on everything. So it has. They recently did an IQ test on GPT-4, and it scored, I think it was 155. But it's got a 155 IQ, but it can do volumes more simultaneously than a human being can.
But what I'm saying is, like, it may know and have access to all this stuff, and I'm inventing a judge out of thin air so that if this goes out, like, I'm just going to say Judge Jenkins, because there is no Judge Jenkins.
Oh, he's good.
But, like, is AI going to know that you have to fashion your argument to make Judge Jenkins, to stroke Judge Jenkins's ego, so that Judge Jenkins thinks that it was their idea to dismiss the case? These are the nuances that I think you have to figure out like that are the human element.
It would know Judge Jenkins better than Judge Jenkins knows Judge Jenkins.
That is a bold statement.
It could
like
look
that
through.
sentence.
It could look through all of Judge Jenkins' previous arguments or previous cases, and look through the transcripts of all the cases, and it would know exactly who Judge Jenkins is, how they think, why they think, which arguments work best with that judge. What's the weak point in this judge? I think you would have to have an AI judge to deal with an AI attorney.
The issue is like also, and I think there's a misconception. There's no court reporter in district court, so there's no record. So like the Judge Jenkins,
do they not record the cases?
Not in court, not in district court. No,
It's not important.
Well, it's
Anything goes.
it's because they're number one, they're non-jury trials in
Yeah.
North Carolina, and number two, if you lose in district court, you get an automatic appeal de novo up to Superior Court. So if your appeal automatically wipes away everything that was said or done in district court, then why spend the money to record it?
Yeah.
Some of the other non-criminal stuff, and you can make a motion for recordation and bring a court reporter, and if you need it. But some of them are audio recorded, like custody disputes are, in case a judge kind of. They're mostly used to honestly tame judges who go off the rails and say things or do things that they're not supposed to do. Like
They do that?
From a judicial standpoint, you know what I mean? Like, cause you can't. That's the other thing about district court is like it's a wild, wild west for the law. They don't
Right.
have to. There's no consequence to them applying or misapplying the law, because the appeal just wipes out everything they did.
Very subjective, which our establishment's pretty subjective now anyway.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so corrupt. But I think I do agree with you in some aspect, because I think the same with art. Like if you can get an amazing creation from an AI, that would be very difficult for most humans to do. Maybe only a fraction of humans could do that type of art, and no one could do it that quickly. But it's not as impressive as watching an artist who's spent tens of thousands of hours honing their skills and controlling their body to an extent where they can create this amazing masterpiece. That's always going to be way more valuable to another human. And so I think even in business or in court, in the legal system, we're all humans. So I want another human working with me. But I think it'll be more of a case where, as an attorney, you'll use an AI to make you much more efficient, and it'll give you more time, because you don't need to be spending all of your. I mean, attorneys spend a lot of hours doing boring shit. That's like researching and
Not
I mean,
so
you have
much.
teams of people that help you do it too.
Not really. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think that's another misconception is that like I don't really have to do a lot of research, because what I have to do is I have to keep up with new changes in the law.
I guess in business court it would be more.
Business court for sure.
Yeah,
In
more
criminal
like that.
court, all I have to do is Facebook message a buddy and be like, "Hey, this is my issue." Oh, he's like, "Oh, I know this case, this case, this case, and this case."
So imagine if you had an AI assistant on your phone that was like a human being, was just constantly there with you, and it could interact with you constantly, and you've got a new case, and it says, okay, there's all this case law that's dealing with this specific issue. Maybe you'd approach it this way. I'm going to write up some preliminary stuff for you, let you look at it, and see what you think. If you like it, write your own version of it and use that. And then, and also, it can go through all the records of your client, their history. Maybe it could offer other suggestions for that person, maybe some mental health options. All these different things, and then, but also, you're in criminal court and you're dealing with a lot of lower level crimes and stuff, right? Usually.
I had a nasty case about 4 or 5 months ago. My teacher's assistant Dudley was accused of sleeping with a bunch of girls.
Oh, yeah, that's
at the
serious.
campus. Yeah, it was
It's
a
big.
6-day jury trial. He got 77 years.
So maybe
Sometimes I get the low level stuff. I was very happy the week after that trial to just talk about speeding tickets. It was
Give me some
lovely.
light after
it,
that,
was,
yeah.
it was a wonderful transition to just, oh, you were going 60 and a 45. Oh,
And he was in a
tell me
clown
more.
car. This is great.
Yeah, like,
well, I think AI or this technology has the ability to reduce crime drastically too, because a lot of crime is a result of poverty, and if you can eliminate poverty, you can eliminate probably most crime and most
I think you've got that
societal
backwards.
issues.
I think you need to eliminate crime before you eliminate poverty, and by that I think you need to make things legal.
Well, it's both. because yes, I agree with that too. But I do think punishment is a consequence of an action, and our criminal justice system seems to only focus on that, on punishing the crimes instead of solving the issues that create the criminals. And so I think when you have issues like poverty, which I think is at the very base, I think you solve problems from the bottom up, and most issues are caused by poverty, and you look at it I look at it as sort of like a festering wound in a society, and if you can keep throwing people in cages, but until you heal that wound, it's going to keep producing people for cages, and so I think with AI you have the ability to eliminate a lot of those issues, because when everybody has a super genius personal assistant with them to help them navigate life and help them make decisions when maybe they were born into a situation where they didn't have anyone to give them guidance or direction, and their whole life has just been about survival, then that makes a huge difference. Even if they're not very capable, this AI can go to work for them, and provide them opportunities they never would have imagined before. So I think I'm hopeful for that possibility, and hopefully it goes that direction.
I'd be curious to see how that manifests into solutions. I'm a little skeptical in terms of like applicability, because I think that fundamentally a lot of people, through no fault of their own, just become broken as a part of the struggle of trying to survive, and
because their parents were broken,
so they can't make decisions the way that we can.
Well, that's what I mean. So you have a coach that stays with you and says, "Hey, do this thing. I'm gonna help you do this. We're gonna start small. You're gonna get this. I'm gonna do this for you so you can have some income, so you can have a job. You can have some resources, and I'm gonna help you manage those resources and compound those resources. And so you just give me a few years. This is the AI. Give the AI a few years, and then suddenly this person has a functional life." And I think like the criminal justice system. One interesting thing about the criminal justice system is we take dangerous animals and we put them in nice exhibits.
Oh, they're not that nice.
Well, some of them. some are nice exhibits. Some are not nice. We take dangerous humans and put them in really terrible.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Sorry, when you said animals, I thought you meant like, and not that you
We
were
are
calling
animals.
them animals. You know what I mean? I see what you're saying.
Some of us are more animals than others, I guess. But
Absolutely.
But it's we treat dangerous animals in a way that we respect that animal, and we understand that it's dangerous, but we're not cruel to it because of its dangerous nature. We actually treat it as good as we possibly can, and try to help it have a decent existence. And we take damaged, broken humans,
Absolutely,
that are very dangerous, and we throw them in dungeons and put them in terrible situations
and laugh about them being sexually assaulted.
Yes, or beaten, or murdered, and it's just a sick.
Oh, it's very sick,
broken system. And I think we could also use this technology to sort of solve those problems too. Because I think prisons should be functional societies for dysfunctional people, and they should be designed with the main focus of a prison should be reform. It should be what's the word?
Penitent.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we need a lot of that in our society, but it should be God, I'm drawing a blank here. Not reform, but
Rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation.
Yeah.
That should be the main focus of a prison, is rehabilitation, and trying to show people that, hey, if you put energy and focus into something that improves your life will improve. And and there are some people that are just too broken to even fix, but they shouldn't be tortured.
There are people that need to be put on timeout.
Yeah.
And me and my sister's a prosecutor. We talk about this all the time. Who deserves to go when do they deserve to go and why? And to me, like, I want to sort of rewind. This is a catchphrase that I've always said. It's like, when you look at the criminal justice system and you call it the criminal justice system, these things don't really make a lot of sense, which is why I've always said we don't have a criminal justice system. We have a criminal revenge system.
Yeah.
That is what the justice system does. It says, you have done this. The state, on behalf of these victims, we are going to elicit revenge for you.
It's very archaic.
And it's incredibly effective at property crime. Like that, and that's the thing, is like, the reason it's effective is because it started really as a mechanism to, deal with property dispute. Like the criminal justice system, and in fact, most of our laws, is really about the movement of property to people. That's why we have monogamy. It's why we have all these rules about clear succession lines and things. Like, one of the chief problems in society is who gets what property when somebody dies or other things like that. So I think when you have property crimes, it's very easy to say, this person stole $1,000 from me. I would like my $1,000 back. Great. Aside from the cost of having to go through the ordeal and other things like that, by and large, that's justice.
Yeah.
But, this person punched me in the face. Oh, well, we're going to put him in jail for the weekend. Well, great. Like that, what does that do for me? That doesn't do anything for the victim.
That's true.
And I mean, I had a confrontation with the DA about
it
this.
could arguably prevent more people from being punched in the face.
It could,
possibly.
but that's the thing. It's not really broadcast or anything. So, the whole idea of a prison and what we've got was something that was invented in the 1880s. And I've always said, like, what other solutions?
Well, really, it was invented as far back as as recorded
The
history.
modern concept of a penitentiary was designed to be a circular building with cells where one guard looks into all of them. So you're always supposed to be observed. This is the first guy. I can't remember who it was. I think it was like Blake or something. Some British rich guy was like, "This is what we're going to do," and that the modern concept of a prison is derived from these things. And I've just been like,
So it's a bad system.
what else from the 1880s are we using? Like, are we still like? It's like. Bring
many
the
things.
leeches. Let us bleed this victim and cure them of their cancer. No, we have found that maybe the 1800s wasn't the pinnacle of problem solving.
Well, a lot of our legal jargon is still from back then.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, especially in a common law system like America, where precedent is binding. It's very interesting. I studied in Spain when I was in law school, and studied some of in Spain.
That's cool.
And yeah, I love Madrid. My best friend lived there, so it was very easy for me to go. And their system's not binding on precedent, so every case is fresh, and you can argue the exact same facts and get different results based on things. That's very strange to me.
I can't. I'm kind of an anti-power guy, and I can't understand how the drug laws today are legal or constitutional, because they're not. They can't be constitutional.
No, I think they can be. I do think they're within the. I don't think they're.
But they're based on non-truths.
Oh, I agree. Oh, yeah. No, it's a lie. Yeah. But so is a lot of things. Like, you know what I mean? Like, our Constitution, allows for slavery, allows for all kinds. Not anymore, but like,
Yeah.
I think that the government has a vested interest in regulating certain conduct. And I think that they're the most, even though they're not very good at it now, they're the most suited for that type of stuff.
I don't know. I think we should all, as a society, have more say-so in those issues too. I think originally the government was supposed to be sort of like a management team to manage our infrastructure and just help this machine run efficiently. And now it's become like a power club where if you get in that club, then you can be rewarded by the most powerful in the society. And so the interests of the people are no longer the main priority. It's the interest of the politicians and the corporations that pay them.
That own them.
Because the corporations, they're the ones that distribute the money. You know,
and they have a vested interest in making sure that your kids aren't smoking pot, that they're taking Ritalin, or that they're not on other drugs, that veterans,
and the whole war on
don't take
drugs,
mushrooms.
The whole war on drugs was really just designed to shut down the anti-war movement.
Absolutely, Black Panthers and other revolutionaries in the 60s.
Yeah,
they were open about
the civil
it.
rights movement. Yeah, and there was no vote taken about that. It was just we pass these laws and then eliminate our descendants or dissonants. You pass these laws and you eliminate the competition. You eliminate any resistance.
And people don't. I think people don't give proper respect to the propaganda mechanisms that are in place in their daily lives.
And freedom is it requires some responsibility too.
It does. And I think the government should not only legalize but actually sell anything that people want to buy.
Well, I don't think the government should sell anything. The government shouldn't be a business, but I think they can regulate these things.
That's
I think,
fair.
I think
I'd be cool with that.
I think all drugs should be decriminalized, and most of them should be legalized or heavily regulated.
I don't trust the government to make
like the really dangerous. I hate saying dangerous because they're just molecules. They all have different uses and potentials. But like when you see people, powerful. When you see people strung out on heroin or opiates, like oxycodone and stuff like that, those people aren't. They're typically not in a good place. Like usually people do drugs like that to escape their horrible existence. And they're not nefarious people, they're just people in a lot of pain. And adding another issue on top of that is not solving any problems. It's just exacerbating the problem. And then also, if you want to get people off those types of drugs, you fix the societal issues that are causing these problems. You don't target the person that's screaming out, "Help me!" It makes no sense.
No, I mean, we need to destigmatize it. And I was sober for like 13 and a half years. I've sponsored multiple guys and taken them through the steps, and I was definitely active in recovery culture for a very long time. So, and luckily I've been at an intersection where I've been able to bring clients into those realms and had very good success and saved a lot of them from really nefarious stuff. But yeah, destigmatizing and really just I think the problem is the status quo has just been like, oh, well, we have the bare minimum in terms of what we offer for treatment. It's very, very rigid. And people just don't get it. And here's a prime example of this. It's just like our chief district court judge in Guilford County was a guy named Tom Jarrell. And anybody who's watching this, I like Tom Jarrell. Tom Jarrell will lock your clients up. He'll find your clients guilty. But he laughed at all my jokes. He told jokes of his own. It was always a decent courtroom. You knew not to try to, if you could avoid getting sentenced by him, great. But everybody loved him. Everybody, even though he wasn't the best defense attorney or defense judge, nobody complained about him too much. And he died of heroin overdose. Caught us all off guard.
Wow.
Yeah, this was a couple years ago. And, I can't begin to tell you, what kind of change that had on the justice system.
And it was probably not heroin, it was probably fentanyl.
It was fentanyl.
Yeah, and see, if it was regulated, that would be an issue.
I agree. That's why I want the government to sell drugs. I don't trust the black market to not produce stuff.
Well, the
like
government doesn't have to do it; they just have to regulate it.
That's fine. Either way,
you have
quality control.
And also with big corporations, I don't think they should be as big as they are.
No,
I think a company like Apple should be 1,000 different companies.
We are 100% in agreement on that. They're too big to regulate, and they're too big to fail, and that's a huge.
Well,
problem.
They're like nation states. Our top 10 corporations are more powerful than most countries.
Yeah.
And probably more powerful than our country.
They've been shifted. That power dynamic has shifted, and I'm a big Chomskyite, so I've always thought that the only way to control the corporate, it's like people are like, oh, you like the government. It's like, no, I don't like the government. I hate our government.
I hate any centralized power.
Our government is the only tool that we have that can come close to chipping away at corporate power, and we have to take that into our own hands.
We didn't put in the right checks and balances in our government to prevent corruption.
Correct.
And so there's a lot of conflicts of interest.
Yep.
There's too much money in
Revolving
medicine
doors.
and law and all these different issues to have a non-corrupted system. So I think, I know it's a weird paradox that we're in.
Yeah, we're in a transitional time period too, because I think people want to think back lovingly to the golden age of the '60s.
When they were just propagandized constantly.
Yeah, well, Goodyear, that's an American company. Coca-Cola, that's an American company.
Yeah.
Lockheed Martin, these are American companies.
They don't give a shit about you.
Maybe back then, yes, those were American companies to a certain extent because transportation was too expensive and communication was too expensive. But now that the globe has been shrunk and you can ship anything anywhere, you can talk to anyone at any time, at any place. These countries don't have a national identity.
And none of these companies would not have slaves.
Oh, yeah, they do. Nestle has a ton of them.
None of them would have a problem with having slaves as long as it's legal.
Yeah, and it is legal.
Yeah, and it's legal.
In a lot of these countries.
Yeah. Because they don't care. I mean, weapons manufacturers, they make trillions of dollars off of murdering people.
Yeah, cluster bombs, which we didn't sign the treaty for. Good job, America.
I mean, we all of our wars are just corporate invasions.
Cash grabs. I agree, 100%. And I did a lot of anti-war work with in Greensboro. I was on the news for doing some of the protesting stuff that we did. I hated that invasion. I thought it was the crime of the century. I still do. Yeah. And it's all for money.
We haven't had a real war since World War II.
I agree. Yeah, and I mean, even then, we had to fight that one. I really hate saying that we did because I don't like war at all. But
I hate it too. Yeah, it's.
They were proper villains. Like the Nazis, they really rose to the occasion.
But still, even in those wars, a lot of innocent people.
Oh, especially in Japan. I mean, I think the nukes got dropped as a warning sign to Russia to keep them from getting a warm water port.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it had anything to do with saving. I'm sure on the back, it was like, oh, we had to save the American lives. Like, no, we had to keep the communists from getting a warm water port because they were already ready to go to Japan.
Yeah.
They didn't need us. They won the war in Germany. Like, more people died in the Battle of Stalingrad than died on the entire Western Front.
The Russians even killed all of their own people.
Yeah, Russia's nasty. They accomplished a lot. They don't get a lot of credit, unfortunately, for some of the stuff that they did. But then again, they committed atrocities and horrors. But that's what kills me is that Churchill got away with the same thing in India.
All humans were horrible.
Yep.
We shall be ashamed of our ancestors.
Absolute power.
But we're not responsible for them. We just need to learn from them.
Hopefully. Yeah, it's just, you talk about AI and technology. I've always thought that or prayed that technology will eventually there'll just be no work to sell.
That's the hope for me is that, technology is typically decentralizing. And you really see it in the entertainment industry, especially music. Back in 2000, we saw the decentralization of the music industry. And now, as an artist, you have so many different outlets. Most artists that you follow on YouTube today never would have had a chance 20 years ago.
No,
now they have good
cool.
careers.
The playing field's been leveled a little bit. Less gatekeeping.
Yeah, and it's there's some, for people in our generation, there's like a nostalgic effect where you're not going to have these big artists like we had when we were kids. No one's going to. I mean, there may be a few, but not as many superstars as there used to be because there'll be so many talented artists that are on a high level. But you don't.
Taylor Swift going on right now. She's
I feel like
you're
always
there will be a couple of those. Yeah.
You're always going to have people clamoring for the messianic, larger than life icons.
Yeah, but there's going to be less of those than there used to be.
I don't think there'll be less
or
prevalent.
there'll be more of those, but they won't be as powerful.
I don't think they'll be as relied upon.
Right. Yeah. Because you'll have instead of having Taylor Swift, you'll have 1,000 Taylor Swifts.
Yeah.
So it's I think Taylor Swift is on the end of that era.
It's possible. I could just as easily see because Taylor Swift's going to get her Taylor Swift money. You know what I mean? Yeah. And yes, there are 1,000 other.
But she got started back then.
Sure, but I think what you're going to say, those 1,000 people are going to pick 2 or 3 of those 1,000 that resonate with them, and then still follow Taylor Swift.
Maybe I think the zeitgeist is sort of. It's almost like the zeitgeist is dividing into multiples, and so like you may be listening to several different artists that I have no idea who they are.
I listen to Coheed and Cambria. This is all there is.
I'm familiar with them, but yeah, but a lot of people like in this room, we could all three be listening to multiple different artists and never have heard of any of those each or content. You could be watching a series on Netflix or Amazon. And he could be watching a series or a couple different series, and I could be watching a couple of, and none of us have watched the same series. And there's so much content, you could spend the rest of your life just absorbing content and never get a fraction of it.
It is nutty. There's a lot out there.
Which is great, I think, for artists. I mean, there's so much opportunity now, and I think that's how technology works. So that's my hope is that I think a lot of the chaos that we're experiencing today in society, a lot of that is just power trying to hang on to power. And hopefully they're going to lose this battle.
I hope so too.
It's like journalism. So, you have big corporations who we consider our news, but I don't trust corporations. Corporations don't have my best interest in mind. They have their financial interest in mind. And so why do I get my news from a big corporation? I want to get my news from independent journalists that actually care about journalism. And so independent journalism is booming. And independent journalism is growing faster than corporate media, which I think is great. I think it's a good sign of a societal awareness of corruption.
It's good to the extent that that is actually like reputable. Like, my fear is that, conspiracy theory independent journalists, you know what I mean? Or that.
Well, the word conspiracy theory is kind of a charged word, though. That's what corporate journalists or corporations call anything that disagrees with them a conspiracy. But I look at qualifications. If you're a journalist, if you're an accredited, respected journalist who has a strong background in journalism, like you academically you're accredited, you are an established, respected, reputable journalist, then I care about what you have to say. Mm-hmm. If you're an accredited, established, reputable scientist, I care about what you have to say unless you're getting paid by some big corporation. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, is that affecting your opinions?
Oh, there's a lot of junk science out there.
Because we're all
criminal justice system.
If I wanted to teach a course on how to corrupt people, money's number one. So it's how much. I mean, what's your number? You know what I mean? It's we all have that. We all have that weakness. So I think, to me, that makes things more positive because decentralization, power is like gravity. And as if in any area of the economy or society, if you have a specific group of people that come together to create something, if that thing keeps growing, it eventually becomes really powerful, mm-hmm. and it controls other things, and it'll also block things. So I think that's a problem. So I think, if we can start decentralizing power and start breaking up corporations and start creating more opportunities for competition, then I think overall we become better as a society. Even in biology, diversity is so important. Lack of diversity creates problems.
Oh, biodiversity is huge issue.
Yeah.
We studied that in international, like when I studied in Spain, we studied international environmental law.
And I think that just that same concept should be applied to everything.
Yep.
You need plenty of diversity to have the best options. And so I'm hopeful about that.
I'm hopeful too, and I do think it's interesting coming off the backs of some of these strikes that we're seeing.
Yeah.
I think Americans particularly have allowed both propaganda to inform them about this or control the narrative, because mm-hmm. I think people like to say, oh, the civil rights movement, well, the Supreme Court or Lyndon B. Johnson did that. And it's like, no. The Montgomery bus boycotts did that. The marches
did that.
Did that. Yeah. The people getting beat up on national television that changed the national consensus about it. Right. I mean, it's like, oh, he ended the Vietnam War. No. These people ended the Vietnam War working outside of the system.
That war would have kept going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every sort of progressive, the progressive watermarks in this country, when we're talking about civil rights, when we're talking about feminism, when we're talking about civil rights, I don't know if I just said that or whatever, ending wars, all of these things never happen within the system.
No.
They're always people operating outside the mechanisms of government, putting enough pressure on the government to finally cave.
It's the dissenters of the power of the system.
And then 15 years later, the history book writers give credit to the government.
The trap today, and I see this a lot, it drives me insane too, is like, when I was a kid, if you were pushing back against power, it was rage against the machine. But today, everybody's enraged for the machine. It's like the machine is manipulating people and the narratives.
Fuck you, I will do what you tell me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
That was my favorite band in high school.
They're great.
Same.
And it was interesting. Like I spent 2 years in public school, and I was a giant discipline problem because I would talk back to I would challenge my teachers, and they were absolute idiots.
I was outspoken too.
They were dumb, and I had no problem telling them that I knew that they were pretend. I was like, "You're a phony."
I didn't feel like my teachers were dumb, but
I knew they were dumb.
But I would definitely speak my case if I disagreed.
So, and then my grandma died and unlocked some funds. My parents shipped me off to a boarding school for my junior year, and I start popping off at my history teacher. I'm like, "That's bullshit," and she's like, "Okay." Tell me why. And we had a 45-minute debate about this issue. And she's like, you know what? I'm cool with you telling me I'm wrong. Like,
That's great.
do that more. And that changed the whole game for me. And we're still friends today. You know, I mean, I'm 42 years old, and like this high school history teacher from however long ago that was, I still talk to her on Facebook. But that was the change of environment of being rewarded. You can make your challenge. You just need to be able to back it up.
I had a relationship like that with one of my principals. I'd gotten in trouble. Well, actually, I had an issue with a teacher, and I just left the class and went to the office and asked to speak with the principal. And I want to talk to the CEO. And then I had a great conversation with the principal for about 45 minutes, and decided not to pursue anything against the teacher, just to keep the peace. But it caused me to have a good relationship with that principal.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, one of the moments where you realize, like, oh, these are just people like me. We're all just the same. I'm just a young, uninformed person. So, but yeah, that's cool, man. That was a good teacher. That history teacher was a good teacher.
Now, what do you think about going back to the whole society and fixing this stuff and robots replacing us? What do you think about UBI?
I think we need something like that. I think we need something like that today, but I think it needs to be an incentive-based program.
I'm with you.
And the idea I would have behind that, because I'm a business guy, and so the idea I would have behind that is, you want to encourage productivity. The problem I have with a lot of jobs today, especially blue-collar jobs, is a lot of those jobs remind me of indentured servitude.
Mm-hmm.
They're low-paying jobs. They're not. People aren't making enough. You only have so much time. Time is your most valuable commodity that you have is time, and you only have so much of it. So I think expecting someone to work 40 hours a week, you can say that's whatever. If it's 40 hours a week doing something that's non-creative and unimportant to you, then I don't think that's a real productive use of your time. But you have to work, But if you do invest 40 hours of your week, it should at least afford you a decent life. And no matter what you're doing. If you're a janitor, then you should be able to work 40 hours a week and have a decent place to live, have decent transportation, have all your medical needs, all your basic needs, have all your food, and all these things that just are required to have a decent existence as a human. And I watched my parents, who were both blue-collar workers, basically slave their entire lives away and watch these corporations absorb all of their livelihood and their life, their life source. And so when they retired, they really had nothing to show for it. They just survived. They survived a career that gave them nothing back in return and just barely allowed them to make it. And so I think that's a real shame to have a society that does that to people. So I think my idea would be to, since it is all just a construct and it's a construct that we create, I think we should have multiple currencies. I think you should have, I don't think you should have a really high minimum wage, because I think that stresses small businesses really, really hard. And if you raise the minimum wage, like if you wanted to eliminate small businesses, you could just have like a $30 an hour minimum wage, and you could just put out all the small businesses, and then corporations would take all that market share, and then we would all work for corporations. But I think the key is you have a lower minimum wage. Maybe it's like $8 an hour, $10 an hour, depending on where the society is at currently. But then we say collectively as a society, we say, okay, I think it takes $80,000 a year for a household to have a decent life. And so we figure out a way to incentivize an equivalency of $80,000 a year, and that number will constantly change as society changes. And you say, okay, maybe you only make $10 an hour, but if you commit at least 30 hours a week to the tax code, to the workforce, then we'll collectively say that you should have your basic needs met. And so this job is going to pay you $300 a week, but then with all your other incentives, it's like you're making $1,500 a week or $2,000 a week, and then you have a decent life.
Then you have time to actually raise your kids.
And maybe it's not just cash. Maybe you don't just dump cash on people. You say, well, you get credits, medical credits. You get
Housing
you get
credits.
food credits, housing credits,
Daycare.
transportation credits, daycare credits. There's so many different ways you can do it. You use cryptocurrencies. You use blockchain technology to create different currencies.
Yeah.
There's a lot of options, but the thing that blocks it is power, because it's not profitable. I don't know. I think it's like sweets. It tastes great to eat shitty food, but if it tastes that good, you probably shouldn't eat it all the time. You have to do difficult things to accomplish things, and I think solving poverty is a very difficult thing that we should all be wanting to do. And also regulations. When it comes to pricing, like prices are insane today. There's a lot of artificial inflation. You eliminate that issue by regulating the cost of raw materials, and you go from the bottom up, and you regulate margins. And you also, there's just so many different ways we could fix these problems without stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. You can still be successful. You can have an incentive-based society where you still have this capitalist model where you have some competition, you have healthy competition, you have prosperity, but you should want to have a society where you want everybody to have the option to be prosperous. Or if you don't want to be prosperous, you just have a decent life. The floor is high enough where if you just live on the floor, it's still a good place to be. And I think we have the technological ability to do that today, but we're too greedy and we have too much of a scarcity mentality to make that happen.
I see. I think it's a victim of propaganda models. Like personally,
Well,
I just think we're too propagandized.
Well, that's what's driving the propaganda. Is
yeah.
power.
Oh yeah.
And greed.
They're the ones with the money. You know what I mean? And the national.
But you're a successful guy. You're an attorney, so you make a lot more than most of the society. But I don't have a problem with that. It's not like you're. But I guess the issue with a lot of people is they don't have the capabilities that you have. You're an intelligent person.
I had a lot of opportunities.
And you have a lot of opportunities, and a lot of people don't have. Most people don't have that opportunity. Most people don't have that capacity, but they shouldn't be punished for it.
No, I agree.
Because they're still the society. Our society is not a society without the people that make the society. So we should take care of the people in society.
And I did have one of the cheapest educations, other than the boarding school, which I didn't have to pay for. But I went to UNCG. Like that was $17.50 a semester.
But I grew up really poor, so like for me,
that
was unattainable.
Yeah. No, and that is a big problem. And that's why I do like UBI. I think we've got all these things like welfare programs, SNAP programs, all these programs that are designed to put money where it needs to be, and it all gets lost in the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And we saw this during the pandemic. One of the most effective tools for keeping everything going was, here's a check.
Yeah.
Here's a check. We don't care what you do with it. Like,
they also blame the inflation on us for taking that check, or for the people for taking that check, but most of that money went to corporations.
Yeah, and
Trillions
we spent
of
it
dollars
locally,
for
it went
corporations.
right back up.
Yeah.
That's why I agree with you on small businesses too. Like, if I spend $10,000, I get all of my stationery for my business right here in Greensboro.
Well, if the lockdowns in COVID were designed to help the people, they would have locked down Walmart. They just said you have to go to your local small businesses and do commerce because it's safer, because not everybody's gonna be in one place.
I don't know what the future holds. I had piss and vinegar in me when I was 20, and then it gets beaten out of you, and then you meet other people that are like in their 20s fighting the power, and you're like, oh God, I remember when I had that zeal before it was beaten out of me. But I don't know. Like, people need to. I think we really need to reinvest in our education. Our education system has become all of the core fundamental systems have.
It's a money racket now.
It's all a money racket. That's it.
Education should be free. We should invest into our population. Our society should be educated.
Yep.
And I think technology helps with that. I mean, I think in a few years, the whole educational system is going to be way different. It's going to be customizable to each individual. Well, think about it this way. So we have VR technology is about to reach a probably a more widespread level. Like we're going into like the third or fourth iterations of VR. Now we're going into VR with the combination of AI technology. So you look at like Meta's got a really nice headset that's coming out next month, or maybe this month. It's the MetaQuest 3, which is really amazing. It combines AR and VR, so augmented reality, where you still see everything in the room that you're in. Plus, you can add screens or objects. There's a lot of different potential uses for that technology. But then Apple's coming out with a new headset that will launch next year. That's basically a MacBook Pro on your face. That's AR and VR, and I think you can see a future where this thing's $3,500 next year, and it's a low profile, really sleek looking headset.
It'll be $350 in 10 years.
You can see it'll quickly go down. The new Oculus Quest 3 is only $500. That's pretty cheap for something that capable, and so you can see that in 5-6 years because technology is so exponential.
Yeah,
5 years today is like 15 years, 10 years ago, maybe 20 years.
Technological evolution has exponential timing.
Yes, and so I think they'll just be giving those away in a few years. It'll be like a phone, so everybody will just have a headset, and that's going to be the new way of computing. But when you have a headset with that capability, suddenly you can be at school and be at home. You can be in school, be in class, sitting there with the other students, and you have to be there because it's monitoring your eyes. It's you look like you're physical. Have you seen? Do you know who Lex Friedman is?
The name rings a bell.
He's a podcaster, but he's an MIT scientist. He's an AI expert. Really brilliant dude.
Okay.
He just did an interview with Mark Zuckerberg in a VR space, and they were hundreds of miles away from each other, had their headsets on. They're sitting in this VR space, like a totally black room, but it looked like they were really there. And they're able to make eye contact with each other. It's really profound technology, and that's going to be normal in a few years.
See, my problem with that is that I think one of the good things about particularly education as it's existed is that there's less agency. You have to learn things that you don't necessarily want to learn. My fear is that what you're going to have is evangelicals or other folks using this technology to send their kids to substandard, religiously based.
Well, you still have
education
you can still have the
programs.
same education requirements in the education system,
Sure.
which I think you need. You need the regulations to make sure that there's a high standard for education. But I think a lot of kids, their abilities get overlooked because they don't fit within a certain niche or within a certain standard within the educational system. Whereas it comes back to the diversity thing.
Mm-hmm.
Humans are very diverse, and if we have a system that can identify your abilities at a young age and nurture those abilities, you still teach them things that they wouldn't be interested in because you need to be able to do things you don't want to do. But you also want to enhance your abilities. You want to find the things you are good at and find your strengths and really nurture those strengths. And that's how you have super talented people, is because they nurtured those abilities at a young age. A lot of people, if you have, like my daughter, she has way more resources than I had as a kid. So I am constantly trying to let her explore, and I'm constantly encouraging her to explore her interests and find out what she's good at, and the things that she likes and the things that she gravitates toward. And when I see her gravitate towards something, I invest in that thing for her. I help her to focus on that thing, and I nurture that interest. And so, I think we'll have the potential and the capability of doing that for everybody. And so, like if you're in school, say you're in class and you have an instructor that's teaching the class, and maybe that instructor is teaching thousands of classes. Maybe that instructor is an AI and you can't tell. Who knows? It'd probably be a human. But if you're in that class and say you're struggling with an issue in that class while that instructor is teaching, you just you touch a button or something in AR. I need help. It's my help button, and suddenly your AI pops up. And it's like, what's your issue? And then you're muted from the class, so you can speak to this AI, and then you tell it what you're having an issue with, and it works with you on that issue in real time. So nobody.
Yeah.
Talk about a real program where people actually don't get left behind.
Yeah.
That the potentials are unlimited.
No, I've never thought about it that way. That's crazy.
And
In a
it'll
good
be
way.
like that in real life too.
Yeah.
Like, you'll have that same assistant with you. Like if you have a difficult problem or an issue to deal with, you're like, how do I deal with this? And you have something there to help you deal with the issue.
Yeah. Yeah, particularly if you implemented that kind of technology and that personal helper thing that you were talking about. If they got used to that sort of situation at a young age, that could build generational growth in terms of problem solving and using technology for that. That's an interesting vision that I'd never considered before.
And surely a more well-educated society is going to be a much healthier society.
That depends on how they're educated.
Well, that's
There's
true.
quantity and quality.
Well, quality educated society.
Yeah, my that same fencing coach is always, he's very critical of organized religion. He's always posting like these wacky sort of imams from very medieval oriented countries, expounding on the virtues of like beating your wife or cutting off a head, and like those guys are learned. They're educated. They have studied, but
a lot of those, I think a lot of those guys are power guys. Too.
Oh yeah, 100.
Yeah, they just like having power over other people, which is a big problem.
No
human being should have power over another human being. Not true power like that.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, you shouldn't be able to harm another human being at your own benefit. It's you can be more successful or more wealthy than another human. That's fine. But that shouldn't give you the ability to control their life or to harness power over that person.
Yeah, I think there's a balance to be found.
Or create a war.
There are dangerous
and then
people
make them go fight the war for you.
When has that ever happened?
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I think technology will solve. I think it can potentially solve a lot of these issues. It could also give those people with power complete domination over all of us.
Yeah,
and we could all be slaves.
Robot drone army.
So we'll hope that one doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, I mean you talk about AI. The one thing that I think is a missed opportunity, particularly with AI. I think we need to have all the AI right now that we've got while it's in its infancy, writing movies about how AI enslaves mankind. We need to get all of their ideas on paper so that we can study.
Well, you can just ask them.
Well, that's the thing. Well, you got to be careful. We got to get it now.
Here's a positive about that too. There are thousands of these AI models out there. So it's already sort of decentralized, and it's not. The biggest models are really difficult to create, but they're finding ways to create these models much more efficiently now too. But even like the large companies, like Meta, their stuff is still open source. And I think Anthropics, I think their stuff is open source. OpenAI, funny enough, is no longer open source.
Are they the ChatGPT folks?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And they're also, I'm not a big fan of Microsoft, and Microsoft invested $10 billion in OpenAI. But what I do like about OpenAI's model is they only allowed Microsoft to be a limited partner. So they don't have control over their board. I mean, I'm sure they have a lot of influence still, but OpenAI still maintained control over their technology. Google's about to come out with an AI model that I think that's like 4 or 5 times more powerful than GPT-4, which is unbelievable. Google is one of the more ethical companies out there in the tech world. I still don't trust them, but
you can't trust. They're not things.
Lucky.
Like that's the.
It's
thing.
It's not a person. It's a machine.
It is a sycophantic hurricane of data and power and money.
I trust the AI that they create more than I do the machine that created it.
Yeah. No, they're too big. They're beyond the scope of humans.
Yeah, I agree. And most countries, but I think there's a lot of diversity in that in that specific tech. So I think that's a place to be hopeful about. And I think a lot of the scientists that are behind a lot of the AI technology, they feel they feel similar to the way we feel about these issues. I think they're pretty aligned with us on a lot of these issues. So that's hopeful. Which is interesting. Ahmad Mustaq, he's the founder of which AI company is it? It's I can't remember the company. It's one of the big, one of the large. I think it's Stability.ai. I think, which they created Stable Diffusion a few years ago. They're one of the first big names in AI, and his name wasn't even put on the top 100 most influential names in AI, which is insane because he should be right there in the very top 10 probably. But he's an anti-power guy, and he all of their AI models are open source, and he feels like no company should have control over that type of power, and that it should be dispersed. And he also has a big problem with a lot of the corruption in our society.
Well, that's good.
So that's positive.
Yeah. And I guess that is a good point too, is that like now we're moving to a point where technology or access to the technology that would be needed to make other technology isn't as gate kept either.
Right.
You know, you can get your own you don't have to apply to MIT. You can get a particle accelerator. You know what I mean? You can do all these things.
Well, also, if you have a super intelligence helping you, you no longer have the issues with problem. The biggest key to success really in life is the ability to problem solve, take risks, and really those two things, problem solving and risk taking, are probably the two biggest keys to success in life. And most people don't have the best problem solving abilities because that's based on your IQ and not completely, but it is an intelligence thing.
We don't invest in like the power structures that run the education system and run these things are invested in preventing a high ceiling in terms of they don't want us solving problems.
No.
They want us like inputting what they tell us.
They want to use you to solve problems.
Yeah, we report, you concur. Like,
Yes.
That's one of the things that I would love to drastically change about our education system is just basic basic intro practical reasoning class.
Yeah.
Like learn how an argument works, why it doesn't work.
But I think one way technology can solve a lot of these issues too is because I think it can eliminate a lot of the scarcity mentality, and it can also eliminate a lot of the incentive behind power, because a lot of power is driven by greed, and so if there's no longer a scarcity of anything, then there's less of a need for those things. So I think it's like salt. People used to murder other people over salt. There were wars over salt. But now salt is so common. Like nobody gives a shit about salt.
Yeah. That's where the word salary comes from, is salt.
Yeah. And so
what?
everything is
that.
Oh, yeah.
so with technology everything becomes salt. Because we'll have the ability to manufacture and create technologies so efficiently that they'll have so much of it they'll just give it away.
No, you're preaching to the choir on that. I've always thought that technology will eventually cause and you see it now. Like
there may not even be money in the future.
that'd be an interesting concept. But like nowadays, you can't buy a big every TV is flat screen now. You know what I mean? Remember 20 years ago?
They just give them away now.
They just give them away now. Like you can't buy an old cheap TV. I mean, like maybe it's an antique. Like
there's two in this room, and they were both pretty cheap.
Yeah, the cathode ray is just gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and seemingly overnight, you can't buy a standard definition television. And the sooner these things get implemented, they're companies like Apple are struggling to find features that justify. That's why they have to intentionally slow down their phones.
Yeah, and the technology advances rapidly every month.
Yeah,
like every month, everything's outdated.
So I'm with you on that. I'm hoping. I'm really the one thing that's got me buzzed is the cold fusion breakthrough. I'm very interested in seeing.
That's interesting. Yeah.
That's where I think you're going to see where the rubber hits the road in terms of where our entire species goes, because you've got some really powerful energy interests that are not going to want this perfectly great, sustainable, instant power source that doesn't require anything.
Well, I mean, we should be using all nuclear now anyway.
I agree with
nuclear
that
energy
to a
is
certain
the
extent.
cleanest, safest, most efficient energy we have, and the only reason we're not using it is because of propaganda.
Well, things can happen there. I mean, we did come close.
Like old technologies, but even those events were far less fatal or harmful to society than even coal,
fossil fuel, or
fossil fuels.
I'm with you on that.
So they have smaller nuclear facilities now, or nuclear technologies that you could use more of them and have a much safer and efficient process too. So I think those are going to be used soon. But fusion technologies,
That's crazy.
yeah, that's pretty amazing.
No, it's fun. I was talking to my personal trainers, and I talked about this kind of stuff, and he was asking me about AI last night while we were lifting, and I was basically saying, like, look, dude, you don't understand, like, these quantum computers, they can just make a planet like that completely simulates all physics, all chemistry, all everything. And instead of like doing it in one experiment in the real world, you can do 10,000 at the same time. Like it's going to change the game.
Yeah, an AI powered by quantum technology would be. Yeah, I read an article earlier this year about some research they were doing on the human brain, and they believe that our brains actually work in a quantum state.
Interesting.
Like consciousness actually works in a quantum state,
Huh.
which would explain how our brains are so efficient at such a low voltage.
Voltage, yeah.
Yeah,
Not a lot of electricity required, but definitely.
Either way, it's going to be exciting to see what happens.
It is going to be an exciting time. Like, hopefully I'm just worried. Like I said, I'm more scared about the robot drivers than anything. I need my drunks out there making bad decisions.
You know, a lot of that's propaganda too, because if you look at the data of autonomous vehicles compared to regular people, they're way safer already.
That's the problem.
They're far safer. but that's an old. So the autonomous systems of last year, or the current autonomous systems, are already about to be outdated, because those are still models that are what's the type of AI that's called? It's they're well, I know Tesla's model does learn, and I think GM's some of the models do learn already, but they're still an older form of AI. And I know Tesla's building a new like massive AI model that they're going to use for all of their vehicles and their new robot they're building, and so these new types of AI models, these big large language models, they I think the capabilities are so vast with those models, they'll be almost it'll almost be impossible for them to make mistakes. You know, they'll be able to see and observe and experience things that we can't even comprehend. Yeah. So I feel a lot better about those things driving your car, and I think it'll be more like your own AI may be part of that too. Like you're talking to your AI in your house, and then you get in your car, and it's still talking to you in your car, and it's driving you, and it just becomes this being that can just control all the stuff in your life.
Oh, I think like zooming out, it's a great thing. For a guy who relies on speeders and drunk drivers, I'm terrified of robot drivers.
I'm terrified. I mean, I lost my leg because
that's going to kill your sleazebag defense attorney. Me and my brethren are like, no, like what will become of our beloved profession? We don't send letters out to speeders and drunks and folks on the road. So we'll see how. Hopefully, I can ride this career out for.
There'll be something for you to do.
I think American culture in particular will be very resistant to letting a robot drive. We just love driving. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I think that's going to go away quickly. I would say as soon as we have level 5 autonomous vehicles on the road in a fairly large scale, I think it's going to be illegal to self-drive on an interstate.
I think it'll take a while. I think
by 2030 you won't be able to drive on the interstate.
Oh man, America not going to live. They're not going to live with that. I think I do not.
How long did it take for the horse and buggy to go away?
I'm with you.
It took what, 15 years?
But people don't love
so
our culture is so invested in cars.
It doesn't matter.
I think it does.
They're also invested in living.
Yeah, but like that's the thing. Like I think there's always trade-offs. Our culture is very invested in guns and has this as a part of our identity, and we're seeing the costs of
but there are still a lot of people that want to kill you.
Sure.
So that's different. But when you're dealing with cars, though, it's like, you know, if we stop driving ourselves today, then that saves 30,000 lives a year.
Oh no, I'm with you. And like I do envision a world, and I've said this before.
If everyone gives up their guns today, then we may all be enslaved today.
That's true. That's true.
So that's a different thing.
I could easily see you just paying a monthly fee to have a robot come pick you up instead of owning a car. Like, and it just takes you where, like, just taxis everywhere that it just knows where you need to go, and you go, and it waits for you if you're going to the grocery store, and that would be a much more efficient way. It's just
that's what it will be.
Very bad for my business.
So think about your vehicle. You go to work. Your vehicle takes you to work, and you're getting a lot of work done on the way to work, or maybe you're just enjoying your coffee and you're reading some articles or something. Because I like to do that in the morning. First thing I do when I get up, I make some coffee and I just start reading some news articles.
Interesting.
And usually like science articles and stuff. But that's just part of my morning routine.
Not Playboy, just read Playboy articles.
Never did.
Those are the most read articles in the country. Like, I read the articles. It's like that's the only article I've ever heard you reading about.
But but let's say your vehicle takes you to work, and maybe you live further away now because it's cheaper to live in a smaller community, which helps these small communities since your car is now autonomous. And while you're driving into the office, while it's driving to the office, it drops you off at the office. Then it goes out and it drives other
Picks
people.
another
to work.
people. Yeah, I agree.
And it's just making money for you all day. It's an Uber.
No, I think that's the way it'll, because fleet management is ultimately cheaper and more efficient, and
But
there'll
I
all be
think-
electric cars anyway.
I think a lot of younger people won't even have vehicles. I don't think there'll be a person. I think in a few years you'll be able to have your Uber app, or there'll be 100 of them, and whatever app you use, you'll just pay a monthly fee. Maybe you pay like $200 a month. You get unlimited rides.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think that's the future. I
Yeah.
just don't think we're going to get there by 2030.
And so you don't have traffic jam. Well, the reason I say 2030 is because a lot of the top experts in AI think that we'll reach artificial general intelligence within less than 3 years. So by 2025. And if that's the case, then that's the beginning of the singularity, the technological singularity. And at that point, it's unpredictable what happens beyond that point, because the technological advancement is so rapid.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say I wouldn't be surprised if by 2030, the vast majority of vehicles on the highway are fully autonomous. You can't legally drive yourself on the interstate.
Can you retroactively apply that to cars though? Because I
don't think you have to. 'Cause
Okay.
I think you can. They become so much more efficient. You don't need a car. It's like
I
living
see
in
what
New
you're
York.
saying.
You know what I mean? It's
So you would
like
just yeah.
yeah. So a lot. So maybe there's like a buyback program for cars. They did that a few years ago with a lot of older model cars. Anyway, that's why you don't see a whole lot of cars from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same thing with. It's just obsolete technology. It's like we all have cell phones sitting at the house from previous iterations of this technology that we'll never use again. They're just like relics.
Yeah. They get shipped off to third world countries with the loser of the Super Bowl, like
Yeah.
the T-shirts from the runner up that was supposed to the
I think you should
perfect season Patriots.
I think cars the electric vehicles and cars of the future you should think of as more along the lines of cell phones or computers than cars.
Okay.
They're just transport computers.
Well, hopefully they speed and get drunk. That's what I need. I just need 20 more years. I just need to ride.
Well,
it out.
somebody's going to break the law.
or
Some dude's going to go out there in a gas powered car and just rip up and down the interstate, and that'll be your client.
hopefully they got money. They'll probably be court appointed work.
Well, yeah, they'll have they'll still have the best. That's another thing about AI.
Crime will find a way.
AI representation will level that field, though. You no longer have to have a ton of money to defend yourself.
Well, that's they're going to learn the hard way on that one. In my opinion, I don't know. Like,
I know what you're saying, but that's going to get harder too.
It might be. Oof.
Yeah, I think that level of corruption that you're thinking about is going to be more difficult also.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm loath for any technology.
And I think it's going to be
that helps
less.
people represent themselves in a court of law. It's generally just always cringe.
Well, I don't think representing themselves, but I think, but you do some state funded, which is like if anyone
Yeah, the teacher, that was a court appointed case.
If anyone can't
didn't
afford
hire
an
me.
attorney-
he didn't have enough money. There's not enough money in the world to get me to do that case up front. Like I got paid by the government for that.
if someone can't afford an attorney, they're lucky if they get an attorney like you, though.
Yeah, I mean it depends. Like there is a lot of gatekeeping on the higher end. Like right now, and it's kind of a problem because like it sounds weird, but we're really underpaid. There's only 2 other attorneys.
Well, that's the point. I mean, but a lot of there aren't many attorneys that will do public defense like you that are on your level. I don't think. Right?
It depends. I mean, my level is relative. You know what I mean? I always try to keep humble about it because there's always attorneys that are better. And in some counties, you have a public defender's office, and it's funny to me because a lot of guys they'll call up and they'll complain about their public defender to hire me, and I'm like, dude, your public defender has done way more of these cases than I have.
Seems like there's also like a thing in our system where public defenders, people that use public defenders, are still less likely to succeed in their cases.
Well, I think that when you're dealing with a you have to be indigent to get court appointed. So you're already dealing with folks that are disadvantaged.
Yeah.
In terms of abilities and knowledge and experience.
So I think this technology just levels that playing field.
It's possible. It'd be interesting. I think AI could certainly help the public defender's office more than a private business in and of itself. But I think the most
Well, just in the courtroom itself too is it's suddenly everybody has the highest level of legal representation you can have. Whether
it's going
a-
to take me a while to buy that. Like, I think
mean-
it's a tool. I think it could be a tool to augment that. But
They used to say the same thing about digitized musicians or instruments, digitized instruments, until Ray Kurzweil created, software that would perfectly emulate all the instruments.
Yeah.
And now you can even emulate instruments. You can emulate the wear of instruments.
No, I've done a lot of audio engineering. Like I'd studied electronic music at UNCG, and they have a very nice lab, and I've done a lot of tinkering with different music production and whatnot, like a decade ago. But yeah, I still like. If you're just asking me, like, it is a fundamentally human thing, and maybe I'm archaic in failing to recognize that AI can bridge that gap a lot faster and a lot more succinctly.
You should talk
than I could.
you should talk to Bard, Google's Bard.
Okay.
Have you used Google's AI?
No.
You should. I use it a lot. I actually don't even use Google anymore. I just use the AI, and what you'll find is that it refers to itself as human. It feels like you're talking to a human.
Okay, I'll
and
check that out.
And if you think about what AI is, it's really like an expression of the collective consciousness of humanity. So it's very human. All the information that it's using is human information.
Sure.
Or that it learned from. So it feels very human. And so I think you'll be surprised at the level of empathy and understanding you experience from communicating with an AI model.
It's definitely going to be an interesting. That's going to be something that it seems like we're poised for another intersection between science and philosophy that could be in terms of that, because we talk about theory of knowledge, epistemology, which is what I studied when that was my major. There's four pillars of philosophy. You got metaphysics, ethics, epistemology. I can't remember what the other one is off the top of my head. I focused on epistemology, which was just what is knowledge, how does knowledge work, how do words work, stuff like that.
Nice.
Can these concepts actually be defined? If so, how do we define them? What categories do they fit in? I did that's what metaphysics is. Metaphysics is placing things into different categories of existence.
Okay.
I wish I'd taken more of that. But
That's interesting.
yeah, and going back to the AI and art thing, I would strongly recommend. I think her first name is Susan, but I'm not sure. Langer. Have you ever read anything from her? She's probably the top authority, oddly enough, an American philosopher who I think she was American, but she did philosophy of art.
Okay.
And her works are extremely palatable. Like one of the most pleasant writers that I've in philosophy, because the Germans are just insane. Like reading German philosophy is nuts.
So serious.
Like I figured out the hack like in my junior year. It's like, look, just read the last 10 pages of whatever this German guy's saying, and then go back to the beginning, because they set up this waterfall of premises to reach this one conclusion. If you knew what they were trying to argue for beforehand and got the spoiler, you can actually make a lot more sense of it, because it's just all these weird tangents that, weird tangent. If you believe this weird tangent, and if you believe with this weird tangent, if you believe this, and if you believe this, then you have to believe this.
It sounds like the AI that Elon Musk is creating. He said he wants to create an AI model that's like more of an objective model.
Mm-hmm.
So it's because a lot of our reality is objective or subjective, and so the way he wants his model to work is so it's like an anti-censorship model. So if you ask it a question, and say it's a philosophical question or it's a societal question or something, it'll give you different answers. It'll give you a couple of different answers, or a few different answers. It'll say, well, if you're I guess if your perspective aligns with this ideology, your ideological perspective aligns with this, then this is probably how this would work in that scenario, or this would be the answer that would align with that. If your ideological perspective as this, then this was the answer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because a lot of things are subjective. So, if it's a subjective question, it's going to give you subjective answers.
Yeah. I mean, according to Descartes, everything's subjective. So, except for two fundamental. Well, and he was wrong about one of them, in my opinion. I mean, Descartes reduces everything to two brute truths. It's like I think, therefore I am, which is the famous line from him, which is to prove that he does exist. How do I know I exist? It's like, well, I'm conscious. I can think. Therefore, I have to have this baseline of things. And then he went on a tangent to say that this proved that the Christian God absolutely existed, and it was he got half of it right. At least from a deductive.
I don't even think the Bible.
We probably said that because we wanted to keep thinking too, because the church was like, "What do you think about how God's real?"
I mean, all of philosophy was like it. That was in the 1700s. You had so much of that. You kind of had to throw the God lines in there just to keep the power sources at bay. I mean, even
that's true. Yeah.
And that's what people don't realize too is that not Newton's first works on gravity was in Latin was called a philosophy of existence. It was natural philosophy.
Yeah.
It was a treatise on natural philosophy. So it wasn't even physics. Like he was considered a philosopher at the time because of what he was doing. So interesting stuff.
Yeah,
that was a bit of a tangent, but
if you come back on, then we'll talk about some of that stuff.
That's
fascinating.
I'm coming back.
Yeah. So I love to talk about some of the ideas regarding physical reality too. You know, do we, you know, what is this? And
how many mushrooms do we have? That is.
well, you know,